In this introduction to handling exceptions in Yale Degree Audit, a brief overview of the parts of Degree Audit and background on exceptions will be explained. Staff already familiar with Degree Audit and exceptions may wish to jump to Minute 4 for instructions. Yale Degree Audit, or YDA, is a tracking tool that pulls information from the Student Information System, Banner, to provide an overview of student progress toward degree, major, and certificate requirements. YDA relies on coding, or scribe, to define the requirements for the degree, major, program, concentration, and/or certificate as they appear in the Yale University bulletins, such as Yale College Programs of Study, the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences Programs and Policies, etc. And then it applies the data in Banner to those parameters. If a requirement is not displaying correctly, it may be because something needs to be changed with the scribe or clarified in the policy. Exceptions come into play when a requirement has been met, but it is not reflected in YDA. The term exception refers to the process of manually updating an audit to reflect that a requirement has been met. Who should enter exceptions? A department administrator, director of undergraduate studies, or director of graduate studies should enter exceptions pertaining to their major or program. The University Registrar's Office routinely enters exceptions for distributional requirements, international study, transfer courses, and will assist departments with technically challenging cases. Common causes for exceptions. Cross-listed courses. If a student took an approved course under the subject code of a different major or a different course number due to cross-listing, an exception can apply using the course code and number as taken by the student. Course substitutions. When a student needs to substitute a required course with a course other than those prescribed by the major or program. International study or transfer courses. These courses must be entered by the URO, with information from the department such as the course title and the specific requirement to which it should apply. The course code and number are replaced with the words international study or the outside credit. Course overlaps for curricular combinations. A Yale College student may use a single course to apply to the requirements of two curricular combinations. These include a second major, certificate, or simultaneous degree. Only 2 such course overlaps are permitted. The direct link to the Degree Audit login page is degreeaudit.yale.edu, and a valid NetID and password are required to log in. The main screen presents the option of either inputting a student identification number, selecting their advisee name from a drop-down, or using advanced search to search using several filters such as name, degree, major, concentration, college, and so forth. The default view of an audit is Student View. Sections can be collapsed or expanded to view only what is most pertinent to the user. To view courses by term, select the 3 vertical dots to the upper right of the page and select Class History. Understanding fall-through, ineligible, and not counted blocks. Courses appearing in fall-through are completed or in-progress courses that do not automatically apply to the student's declared major, program, or certificate. If the student has satisfactorily completed a course eligible to satisfy a requirement by means of exception, it might be listed in this section. Ineligible means the student enrolled, but the courses are not eligible for credit toward the degree, such as failed courses, withdrawals, and ineligible repeats. Not counted includes items in the student's academic record that do not count toward the degree, regardless of the grade. These could be credits or classes exceeding the maximum allowable, such as graduate or professional school courses for Yale College students, ROTC courses, or lessons. These courses can sometimes be redeemed by an approved petition. How to enter an exception. Before beginning, it's helpful to have the subject code and course number of the exact course the student completed, as well as the requirement to which it will be applied, and to know in which block of the audit the requirement appears. Once in the student's audit, locate the Exceptions tab at the top of the Degree Audit page and click it. Scroll to the relevant section or block in the audit and click on the blue plus sign beside the requirement. In the Add Exception pane, begin by selecting an appropriate exception type from the drop-down. Also Allow is the most common, but the other types will be addressed later in this tutorial. Enter the subject code and course number in the fields provided. In the case of a cross-listed course, use the subject and course code the student completed, not the major department's equivalent. Do not do anything with the with row of qualifiers. If it seems like that may be applicable, reassess the situation or consult with the University Registrar's Office. Use the description field to enter the course number and requirement. This helps make determinations clear, especially when multiple exceptions exist for one requirement. Although character space is limited, use shorthand that clearly indicates where the exception is applying. For example, MUSI 419 fulfills advanced course requirement. This will be visible on the audit. Always use the Details section to include the name of the DUS or DGS who approved the request. This is essential for documentation and accountability. Click the blue Add Exception button at the bottom of the pane. Once the exception is added, a new audit will automatically generate. Exception types and when to use them. Also Allow allows an alternate course or credit to count for the selected requirement. It allows the requirement to accept more choices. Also Allow is the exception you should always try first. Apply Here is used in the graduate school only. This exception overrides the scribed course and any qualifiers on the requirement and forces a course into a specific requirement. Rarely or never use this requirement without knowing why an Also Allow exception would not otherwise work. Most admin users for Yale College do not have access to this exception type. Force Complete marks a non-course-based requirement complete without having to apply a course to the requirement. These exceptions can only be added with the permission of the DUS and should not be used for course requirements. Remove course and/or change the limit. Typically only applied by the URO in cases with an approved petition, this action concerns a requirement that can only be met by a specific course or changes the number of classes or credits allowed or needed to meet a certain requirement. For example, allowing a 0-credit international study course to apply to a requirement that calls for credit. A summary of all exceptions entered is located at the bottom of the audit in the Exceptions block. It's a good idea to check here for any existing exceptions before applying a new one. Exceptions will also appear in the Requirements section of the audit in line with the correlating requirement. It's a good idea to check here after an exception has been entered. Sometimes an exception doesn't pull into the audit. Here are a few tips to help identify the cause. Refresh. Although Degree Audit updates every 2 hours, the Refresh button at the top of the audit forces a refresh for any changed banner data in between scheduled updates. Check for overlapping courses. Are there 2 other courses already overlapping with another major, program, or certificate? Yale College policy states that students may not apply the same course credit toward the requirements of more than 2 curricular programs. Check for non-letter grades. If the course is graded with a CR, make sure that it is not exceeding the maximum allowable CR grades for the major. Exceptions involving international study or transfer courses need to be applied by the URO. If the approved course was taken with the cross-listed number, the exception must be applied with the course code and the number that the student took it under. Prerequisites are trained to share their major only. Any course that is looking to share with another major should be requested for exception by the URO. Summer courses must include the S before the number and sometimes an E when applicable. If none of the above apply and the exception does not appear in the audit or pull correctly, leave the work in the audit and contact the URO for assistance. Documentation is key in resolving these issues efficiently. This is an example of an exception that has been unhooked. Unhooked is a term used when an exception is not being enforced. If there has been a change to the scribe or block that the exception was applying to, generally the exception will fall off and become unhooked. This most commonly occurs when a student changes their major. When to escalate. Sometimes, despite best efforts, an exception might need to be escalated to the University Registrar's Office. Here are some instances where escalation may be the best course of action. Complex exceptions, such as apply here, international study, transfer coursework, substituting one course for another, and courses holding a CR grade that exceed the major's maximum allowable, should always be escalated to the URO. Prerequisites. If they are not displaying correctly or need to be adjusted, especially those that share with another major, these should be handled by the URO. Technical issues should always be brought to the URO for assistance. If you encounter a circumstance not covered in this introduction, please contact the URO for guidance.